Hello, everyone. Good morning. And it's never good to be the person between your break. So hopefully we can get through this quick. My name is Edathumparampil. I'm responsible for the data machine learning capabilities as well as our digital app development at Baptist Health South Florida, which for those of you who are Miami-based would know as the premium healthcare location for folks in this area. Oh, okay. So Charles covered a lot of ground in terms of how to look at the methodology of data science and how to build teams and so on. So I'm not going to get into that. But my background, I started working with data and machine learning, especially neural networks back in the 90s, flexible manufacturing systems, designing systems, and so on. Since then, I've gone on to work in multiple industries, practically every industry there is. And I've had the good fortune or the opportunity to set up data and machine learning teams in a varied set of industries, including Bank of Montreal, which is a 200-year-old large Canadian bank, to Disney, to now Baptist Health South Florida. So through these experiences, I've noted down some things, more like notes to myself. The next time if I'm to do something, to set up a data science team, what would I do or should I not do? I called it a leadership survival guide, but leaders, meaning individual contributors or managers, anyone who's trying to organize and set up a data and machine learning team within a medium to large size enterprise. So with that, why are we having this conversation? What is the context? Over the last 10 years or so, thanks to a number of great developments, data science and machine learning have been democratized, if you will, across all manners of businesses and industries and so on. Technology has been a big part of it, being able to deal with large sets of data, process them, store them faster, transfer them faster. You guys know that story. The accuracy of models themselves have improved, and newer types of models and techniques have come to play as well, especially neural networks based techniques. And overall, the mindset across the world, across industries have changed, or people have realized how important and how feasible it is now, as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, to be able to set up data and machine learning organizations. So overall, there is demand, most companies or any company that you go to these days have a need for data and machine learning, and many of them are still in the process of setting these teams or groups up. So I'm going to start with my first. I structured this as a set of do's and don'ts, right? So with each do, there will be a don't as well. So start with when you are, especially if you're starting something new in the data machine learning space, it is always good to publish a documented strategy. This could be a Confluence site or a SharePoint site or a PowerPoint deck. It doesn't matter what your method of documentation is. It is good to announce your intent to the rest of the organization. And it is also good to hold yourself accountable a little bit by saying, here are some of the things that we would want to accomplish as part of this effort. It is still a fairly new area for a lot of companies. So it is also good to articulate a rough roadmap in terms of what are some of the capabilities that you would want to work on. And it's a flexible roadmap. As you learn more about the business, as you learn more about the business opportunities, that roadmap will shift. But it is always good to start with a roadmap of a set of capabilities that allows people to understand what it is that you're looking to accomplish, especially when you're starting something new. Roadmap is important, but don't prioritize based on hype. Every week there is a new, or every month. Like literally last week, someone told me machine learning with quantum computers is the next best thing. I'm sure it is, and it'll come, but there are much more important, much more valuable use cases from a business perspective today that we can all address. So look for the ones that makes the most meaning or difference to your organization and your business partners. In some cases, did I move forward? In many cases, you would have ready-to-use off-the-shelf options from AWS or Google or other SaaS platform vendors in the machine learning space. You don't have to build everything. You may be the first capability that you release or deliver might be based on an off-the-shelf web service that is available from AWS, and that's fine. We at Baptist Health, one of the first things we did was leveraging computer vision to read documents, patient identification, as well as other documents. And that was based on an AWS recognition web service. But it is still a capability that is useful. We could get it to market really quickly. So take advantage of those available opportunities. So you have a roadmap, you have an intent that you've published as a strategy. Now you have to build a team. There are certain, in my opinion and my experience, there are certain minimum required roles for a new data science and machine learning team. An engineer, and this is not just a data engineer, an engineer who's able to wire things together, build pipelines, or in case of, we talked about SaaS, AWS type of vendors before, being able to connect and invoke a service. So an engineer who's able to, almost like a full stack person who has data chops, is a critical role. You can't have a data science team without a data scientist. So someone who's able to go deep into the scientific aspects of data science and machine learning, that's another key role. We also need, in my experience, a product owner or a product manager who's able to connect the dots between what your business wants as well as the solutions that you're building. Those three, in my opinion, the engineer, the AI machine learning or data science product owner, as well as data scientist, those three are minimum required roles for you to be effective and make a difference. Are we both clicking? Okay. No, up. We have much further down. Let me click. Yeah. Further up. One more. Yep. When you build a new team, it is, especially when you have a small team or a team that is starting up, it is important not to overlap their responsibilities too much. You need to have clear ownership and accountabilities that your team can take on and deliver. Especially with a new team and people don't know each other very well, you don't have the team chemistry yet, the last thing you want is for people to stand around wondering, is this really something that I do? And this is particularly true in the data science space. So you have, especially when it comes to data scientists and data engineers, it is, where does data engineering start? I mean, you could argue that data scientists or a person who's working on a model from the first day, starting with an exploratory data analysis, they are working on engineering aspects of data. So there will be conflicts, there will be areas of sort of confusion, but it is important to iron that out early. Find those issues early, let the team sort of figure those out, have frequent retrospectives and those types of events so we can iron some of those things very early in the cycle. Modern data science, AI machine learning, it is heavy engineering, whichever way you look at it. So a technical reference architecture that shows which platforms or which tools are you using and how do they all play and work together? How do you integrate some of these things? Many companies or enterprises have hybrid cloud or multi-cloud situations. How do you put it all together? What are your platforms and solutions of choice? I think it's important to call those out early. Now, it is still a very fast and evolving field. A lot of new tools are coming out now. There's obviously a proliferation of no-code tools. Some of them are getting really good. It's I don't think it is yet one or the other type of a situation. You have to be able to look at your needs holistically and say, well, there may be some overlap here, but I'm still going to need these 3 or 4 different tools to play nicely within my sandbox to be able to accomplish my goal. So find the right tool for the right job, and it is okay to have a little bit of overlap in some cases between what each of these tools would do. Once you start getting into the technical details of AI and data science and machine learning, it's very easy to get caught up in the excitement of the science itself. It's really, really fun. You have a problem, you're finding different ways to solve it, but know or realize that it is still a very new field for majority of our stakeholders and partners that are in these enterprises. They are going to need a little bit of a helping hand, at least up front, and to understand some of these things better. So analogies, one-pagers, those are the types of things that you should have ready. You should plan and prepare for it so you can communicate with your stakeholders who are not so well-versed with the science of it using some of these techniques. Thank you. Operational system integration, the story or the evolution of data science and machine learning in enterprises is littered with shelfware that groups have built with the best intensity, accuracy rates of 90 plus, but nobody uses them. The last mile is the most important, in my opinion, when you're building a system. How do you plug a system into the place where someone is actually going to use? This could be your website or your, point of sale system, or in our case in healthcare, an EMR system. It's absolutely critical that you plug the output or the insight or the forecast into a system that people use on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to having to go to yet another tool or a dashboard or whatever. So plug in or integrate tightly into the systems and the tools that your partners are already using. And don't overlook operations. Machine learning models are going to degrade over time. You have to have monitoring systems in place. You have to have methods to detect or controls to detect the degradation of your models. It is important to have some idea as to how you're going to accomplish that technically. Is this going to be a tool, a full life cycle machine learning platform, or is it? And there are several of those, right? Google has it, AWS has it, as well as other vendors like DataRobot. Whichever one you choose, and you could even change your mind later on, a year from now, beyond your initial bootstrap phase. You can see, but have something upfront so it doesn't become a technical debt or a debt that you have to fix later on, which becomes obviously much more prohibitive. Sorry, people. I think Charles covered this a little bit as well. When you pick a project or start a project, always define an acceptance criteria upfront. It is not enough to say I will get 90% accuracy or a 95% accuracy. It has to be stated in business terms, whatever that might be, right? And each business or each area has a different way of describing it. But get a business acceptance criteria defined upfront. And sometimes it's going to be multiple factors, not just one number or one metric, and that's okay. As long as it's agreed upon upfront and people are willing to stand behind it and support you, that's great. Governance, especially in data, data is biased because there is bias in the real world. And when we use that data to train our models, the model is going to be biased as well. You have to subject your outcomes to extreme scrutiny. There is no other way of saying this. to be able to find it, because it is very easy to overlook the bias when you even when you have control. So having reviews and those types of, there are lots of things that we do, peer reviews or business based validations and so on, but the bias testing for bias is turning out to be a science in itself. And it may be, you may do different things in your industry, in your business, based on your unique needs, but it is good to have that defined upfront as well. All right, last one. I had to leave you all with a do as opposed to a don't. It is important to celebrate your success, even if it is the smallest one. My team, some of them are here. I think every Friday they have a session where they share on Slack or wherever, they share their wins and congratulate each other. But it is also important to let the rest of the organization know what are the things that you've done, because it is exciting stuff. As people hear more and more about the cool things or the great things that you and your team are doing, chances are more ideas will come, more use cases for your roadmap will come to you. So it is important, it is good for your team as well as the rest of the organization to celebrate these wins. Celebrate often, celebrate early, as they say. And I think that's the last one. If there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
A quick question. Obviously, you're regulated by HIPAA, a lot of constraints. Is there some limit in what you can do based on the information that you can use, not use? Where does governance come into play, and just our other organizations that might not be under that scrutiny use it? So yeah, just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, we are regulated by HIPAA, and even when personal health information is not involved, there are, let's say if you're using data science and machine learning to predict clinical outcomes. So those are regulated as well. So PHI has been less of an issue in the sense that there are techniques from a technology and engineering perspective that you can do to obfuscate your data, or everything from aspirational things like homomorphic encryption to somewhat more regular data obfuscation. So so far we haven't run into a situation where we couldn't do something because of a HIPAA or PHI related issue. There's always a technical solution or way around it.
Hi. How do you stay competitive in the market? Because at the beginning you said it's always good to get those low-hanging fruit. But say your competitors are, using a certain, model or something like that. Does that push you more to use that model, or, how do you stay competitive, basically?
In our case, though, we are quite patient and consumer focused. And there is an aspect of helping the providers, the doctors and the nurses as well. So our roadmap is oriented towards those two communities primarily, helping our patients and helping our providers. From a healthcare is a slightly different kind of industry. It's more about helping people than, I think majority of the healthcare systems in the United States are not-for-profit, with some notable exceptions like HCA and others. So it's less about competition from that perspective than who has the best services and the best capabilities. So we do compete in that regard. Given how new data and machine learning is to healthcare, it is pretty much a wide open field at this point. I don't think we are at the point where we are looking over each other's shoulders just as yet. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
What are some of the challenges you guys have faced, like most critical ones to your company?
I mean, there's all manner of things. Finding talent in today's market is a huge issue just to get off the ground. You could potentially, and this is what we've done. We've worked with some of our vendor partners to set up teams for us. From a technical perspective, I think we've had platform challenges, especially when you're in the process of migrating your on-prem classic or legacy assets to a newer platform. In the middle of that, starting an effort such as this or a team such as this, that's sometimes difficult, and there are ways around it, but you could create a separate sandbox and so on and so forth. But the technology platform is a challenge sometimes. The biggest, now that I'm thinking through it, the biggest has been, in my opinion, healthcare specifically works based on largely protocols, well-established protocols, tested many times over for risk and adverse events and so on. When you build something, when you build a new capability, it is important to plug that into the context of the protocol. Sometimes that would mean you have to update a nursing protocol that has been standing for 10 years straight, which means you have to get it peer reviewed, you have to train your folks around it, make sure it's regularly updated, and so on and so forth. So the plugging into the care assistant aspects is definitely something that is a unique challenge or opportunity for healthcare.
Hey, you mentioned having well-defined. I'm done here. You mentioned having well-defined and non-overlapping roles. In a lot of early data science teams, it's necessary to be scrappy and kind of just get results early, often, and sort of iterate on top of them. How do you kind of manage that scrappiness and then having those well-defined roles and non-overlapping teams?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. It is really tricky, but when I was talking about it, my intent was you define to the extent you can, especially the engineering versus science responsibilities. You do need to be scrappy, and on the other hand, there are sort of natural limitations to how far you can separate some of these things, like, again, data exploration, for instance. I don't think there is a silver bullet or a template per se. The way we've addressed it is by sort of frequently doing retrospectives and saying what's working for us and what's not. Sometimes things slow down, sometimes people are upset. All of those are sort of symptoms of larger problems, and we go after and make the right adjustment. I don't think there is a silver bullet. Now, everyone doing everything is a recipe for disaster, especially in an enterprise context, which is medium and large. So you do have to have some separation so people can focus and get things done. And as you start, we are also starting something up. So there is an amount of specialization, and I don't mean that from a pure technology or science perspective, also from your own business, right? So on the one hand, the engineer would need to go find out where is our data warehouse, or where is our, what are the different systems that we have, and so on. The data scientist has to learn and understand the business a little bit. So defining some of those helps, right? So they're not stepping on each other's toes. But there will come a time when, it's faster if this guy did the other thing as well, and you just have to adjudicate that on a case-by-case basis. But have frequent retrospectives, every week, every 2 weeks, at the very least.
Hi. Would you say that most of your resources on projects are toward the business side, or do you also have people working, working image recognition or other kind of projects that can support the physician's work? And if that is the case, how is that interaction with them? Like how you get them to accept this algorithm or projects that can kind of do their job in certain ways?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of industry context before I specifically answer that. So there are healthcare institutions that are like us who specialize, and our goal is to provide care for the community. Then there are healthcare institutions that are either an extension of an academic institution like a university, or a research facility, even, or a medical college, and so on and so forth. So the way you go at some of these things is different based on if you're in an academic or a university hospital, chances are you are using every opportunity to research and find a breakthrough in terms of using some of those things in the diagnostic space, right? Being able to use computer vision to detect tumor, as an example. But when you're in a when you're a provider like us, for instance, like I said, our focus is giving the best care possible. We've deliberately, given where we are in our journey, we've deliberately said diagnostic applications of data science and machine learning is not something that we are currently focused on, because it has a long tail, right? It takes 5 to 10 years for any new breakthrough to actually, you have to do trials and so on and so forth. That is not to say we don't do that, especially in oncology and within the clinical and physician practice. There is tremendous amount of research and those types of efforts going on, which is finding path-breaking diagnostic approach to approaches using data and machine learning. This team, the data and the AI team that I've built, focuses on other applications. So consumer patient experience, it's a huge wide open space. There is operations, optimizing our operations, everything from supply chain to finance to resource allocation. Also care assistance, there are things that we can do bedside to forecast, things like sepsis and readmission or fall risk, so on and so forth. So we focus on those in our case, and any research happens in the physician clinical space. Yeah.
Hi, you mentioned sourcing talent as a obstacle challenge. I'm curious, what is it you look for when sourcing those data analyst teams to support your programs? What's most important to you?
I try not to look for unicorns. In the past, that has been problematic. We tried to. That's why I had that trifecta model, right? So someone who's specialized in engineering is a unique role. Product ownership is, or the business aspect of it is one role. And then when we hire data scientists or analysts, however you call them, it's getting increasingly difficult now because a lot of the hype is around neural networks based techniques, but how often do you really use them in a regular project, right? So if I had to pick between someone who's a PhD in neural networks versus someone who has 15 years of excellent, successful track record in terms of solving problems with data science, right? Not a particular type of solution, I would go with the latter and than the former. That is not to say there is no room for, I myself am a neural networks aficionado, but when it comes to business implementation, I think we'll have to balance that out. Okay.